I used to have a
All
town
right.
manager.
Good morning. Welcome to the shit show.
Well, whatever you want to call it. I prefer to call it Coaches and Coffee. You guys want to call it the shit show, but I guess they're all one and the same. So good morning, Wizard.
Morning.
Morning, Professor.
Good morning.
All right. So we thought we would start this podcast off with a new episode, and we'll let our listeners say whether they approve, deny, don't care, don't even listen, I guess.
This is going to be an interesting one where one of us started this shit show this way and the other two don't care, but go ahead.
Well, we'll see all of the comments. I'm sure we've actually had some comments this week, which was nice to see. Somebody put some kind words in there about the professor's old AAU program, and it's what it's all about. But so we're going to do maybe 30, 45, maybe a minute. I'm challenged to whether or not I can get mine in within
You're challenged, all right.
45. Thank you. Appreciate that compliment.
You got a 50-second lead in to the 30-second thing.
I mean, Christ, we're already freaking behind the eight ball.
Well, some of us live our life that way, my friend. All right. So yesterday was the 40th anniversary of the death.
Wait, you didn't even introduce this.
Okay. All right. You want me to start over? So we're going to pick.
Well, I mean, if you're going to do the thing, at least say what it is that we're doing. Don't just lead into that. I mean,
okay.
Our listeners aren't as educated as you are in some cases.
Or you. Right. I get you. All right. So I did start to say we were going to do a 30 to 60 second monologue on a topic of our choosing. Could be a story from the week, could be about sports, doesn't have to be about sports. And each of us are going to take a turn each week, giving our 2 cents, so to speak, and go from there. So is that good enough lead in?
That's perfect.
Okay, good. All right, now that we're through that, so 40 years
40
ago,
seconds, on to the Wizard.
40 years ago, yesterday, the Len Bias story, or Len Bias passed away at the University of Maryland. The story behind him was the Celtics, in what's a rarity, had won the 1986 championship, and they had the number 2 pick in the draft that summer, and they drafted Bias, and on June 19th, he took a fatal overdose of powdered cocaine in his college dorm room. Not known for doing drugs, obviously made a bad decision, but it kind of put the Celtics organization, although they did make it to the finals the next year, into purgatory for 2 decades before they got back to the finals again in 08 and won it. But then tragedy struck the Celtics a second time 7 years later when Reggie Lewis died in the summer workouts of a heart failure. So Len Bias was a standout player at Maryland, grew up in Maryland, was born in Maryland, and probably one of the biggest what if scenarios. He was compared to Michael Jordan at that time. I don't think we can ever put him back in that stratosphere, knowing what we saw with Michael, but that was how he was compared. So a sad day in Celtics history, and not quite as bad as the great Bambino curse, but close. On to Professor.
Well, I thought we always went you, the Wizard.
Oh, sorry. We'll go to the Wizard.
I don't think that's one of the biggest what-if moments in history. I think one of the biggest what-if moments in history was when Dan Marino was drafted by a team that had no defense and really did nothing in his career, never won a Super Bowl, but he's talked about as one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. So I think that's a bigger what-if. He was really drafted by a real team.
Wow, that hurts. That hurts.
Oh, that's right. You are a Dolphins fan. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Nope, that's fine. Fine.
And that moves on to me?
Yeah.
I'm going to go a whole different route after the 4.5 minutes of introduction here. And my monologue today are two pretty sad stories, actually. I want to just give a shout out to Chris Cook, Thetford girls basketball coach, who right now is going through big battle with it looks like brain cancer. and they're doing a fundraiser at the Hungry Bear in Bradford. I wish I had the date, but I think it might be this weekend. Anybody feels like going there and supporting a good cause for a coach, I appreciate that. And then also one of my officiating friends, Jonathan Ross up in Danville, got in a car accident this past week, and his two daughters died in that accident. And I just want to make the people aware of, it's really hard in our coaching and officiating community when things like this happen, and it happens all the time in life. But man, does it hit home in 1 week when we haven't lost Chris Cook, but when you go through those kind of tragedies.
Well said. And we all coached against Cookie when he was in Division 4. I grew up with him. We went to grade school together, and then I went to Oxbow, and he went to Thetford Academy, which is back at his alma mater coaching. And he's got a great support system, keeping in touch with him as much as possible, but respecting his privacy as well. So yes, we pull for him. I didn't know Mr. Ross, but I did read the story after talking with you the other day. So sad story, but these are the things that happen, and the relationships that we develop with other coaches or other officials in your case, they all hit home. And I think all of us can attest to, somebody battling cancer in our lives at some point. It's sad.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So this week's episode, we're going to start to dive into, the world of officiating, and we'll probably try to keep it as close to basketball as possible, but, I'm going to throw it over to the professor, who is the only patched official in this group, to get us kicked off.
All right. Just for clarification, I am no longer patched because I stopped going to all the meetings, and paying my dues and all that kind of stuff. But, it was a pleasure to be able to coach and officiate, and I would officiate in Vermont and coach in New Hampshire to try to limit the interaction between the the officials that I was screaming at, and then go have to ride down to a game to do it with them. But occasionally I would coach at either Rivendell or Bloom Mountain, and those guys were doing my games. And we had one healthy game where I took 32 minutes to let my officiating friend know how I felt about him, and then the next night got in a car to drive down to Sharon Academy to do a basketball game. So those are always wonderful moments. So that leads me into the discussion about how we as coaches, and I've loved watching the two of you deal with officials. I'm definitely going to lead this off by starting with Mags, but my favorite one is watching the Wizard deal with officials. Because usually it meant me being a little irate with somebody, and him, I wasn't sure if he was falling asleep on the bench. And I know how he feels about officials, but I don't know how he was able to, unless he was medicated, to deal with them during the game. So, Mags, lead that one off with how you deal with the officials.
Well,
on and off the court.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, first off, the reason why we start at 5:00 girls basketball now is because of the Wizard. 5:30 got to be a little too late for a start for him. So that's probably why he started to doze off on the sidelines. Same to you guys. Like normally, I remember coaching against Cass, he rarely stood, unless it was to come on the floor for the game or go to the locker room. He was always sitting. Russ, you're always up and pacing, similar to myself. So I guess it depends. I mean, I think we've all done this, but I've done this long enough now where there's not many officials that I don't know. Sometimes in the playoffs you'll get officials that you've never seen, which understandable. But the shortage of officials is causing us to see more. I don't know. I guess I try to be honest. I try to be respectful. Sometimes it's difficult in that, I'm an emotional and I speak with emotion, during a game. And something might happen, somebody might travel in front of us and, my response is, hey, that's a travel or whatever. And, it's just the not being able to control my words, I guess. But try to have, good conversation with the officials throughout the game. There's some officials that you can talk to, and some officials, aren't interested in conversation. Some officials, you can ask them a question and, you can yell it at the top of your lungs and they pretend they don't hear you. And others you can quietly ask them and they'll come over and they'll explain what they saw. One of the things that I think we'll get into at some point, all I ever want as a coach is the consistency from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. So if it's a foul in the first quarter, it's got to be a foul in the fourth quarter, regardless of what the score and time is. But outside of basketball, there's a few officials that I've got to know on a personal basis. It's funny. We will go out and talk about games that they might have done, and I don't know. I think we're all human in the end, and hopefully over the years, the officials don't think that anything I say is a personal attack per se, but really just try to keep open communication, not try to make them look awful if they make a bad call. Yes, let them know how I saw something like that, but I think we have enough fans. I mean, sorry, not fans. I think we have enough officials in the stands that make their job as miserable as possible already. So that's what I got.
Yeah, I mean, my approach is kind of the same as far as, they're human beings as well. And like any profession, you have your people that excel and you have your 10% who obviously really don't give a shit. I mean, it's obvious when you do a game and you have, especially when you have a 3-man crew, it's obvious when officials are making calls in sections of the floor that they're not even supposed to be covering, that they're trying to cover for somebody. Um, you know, it, I never really got too out of hand. The few times that I had technical fouls called on me, it was because, I mean, one time I said, I think my words were, "That's not right." And there were another time was, "She didn't even touch her." And in fact, when I did the game where I said she didn't even touch her and got a technical foul, the other referee came to me after the game and said, "You were right. She didn't even touch her." So
Tee him up. Tee him up.
yeah, right. But I mean, I never swore on the floor like that. I never wanted to embarrass my kids, embarrass my family, and especially embarrass my wife and come home and have to deal with her saying, "If you can't act any better than that, you might as well stay home." Um, I did have one person that was a nemesis, and he was a Vermont official that after one game, I told him that he should not cash the check that he was going to receive because he did not earn it. And the very next game, he teed me up 30 seconds into the game. So, it's as long as you're calling the calls like traveling and the fundamental calls and making those calls, and the game is safe. I did have a recording. I probably can't even watch it now because DVDs are gone out of existence. But a game where a, a player was getting a screen put on them out of bounds. The player got knocked out of bounds right in front of the official, and there was no call. You know, I didn't show it to the official because he's a very prominent one, and I'm not going to upstage or try to embarrass anybody like that. But I didn't go into it wanting to argue with officials. I always told the girls, you adjust to them, they don't adjust to you. So if the game is allowed to be rough and tumble, you go out and play that way. Get after it. But if you have to mind your manners and keep your hands off, then you do as such. Um, and unfortunately, we ended up in foul trouble more than not. But as a matter of fact, it was shocking to not be in foul trouble after a game. So
That's usually the coach's fault.
yeah, usually it is. And see, the officials in the stands, there was some other words that we had. And one of my assistant coaches coined the phrase bleacher creatures, and that kind of stuck in my head. So that's all I ever said. But you know, like the officiating crews, you know, you had some guys that officiated together all the time and you loved to see them. And then you had some guys that officiated together and you wanted to say PU, you know,
or F you.
yeah. But you know, like I said, I don't want the game to get out of hand just because of the way the foolishness they're allowing on the floor. So that's my approach to refs.
I loved your story about getting teed up 30 seconds into the next game. And I think as an official, not talking as a coach, but as an official, I think the one thing that we try really hard as officials is when that game ends, that game is over and we have to start fresh slate. And I don't think necessarily as coaches we do that all the time, but I'm glad to see that as officials we also don't do that. Teeing you up 30 seconds into a game is beautiful. I would have laughed my ass off if I had been on that crew, but that's too good. I think about officials as I hiked this past winter in Spain, and just about every little town we went through in central Spain had a bullfighting ring. And I step onto the basketball court as a coach, and those 2 or 3 people come out in their striped uniforms, and all I see is red. And I just want to gore them to death with comments. I cannot stand officials when they step out onto the court. Even the really good ones. I mean, I know we don't always mention names, but I watched Tim Purrington do games in the North Country and down to us, and I just smile when he comes on the court because I know he's going to make great calls. I know he's going to do his best to be impartial. And even then, he's out on the court, or Bruce Mason, they're out there on the court doing great games for me, and I'm still screaming at them because I can't stand them for 32 minutes. And I just think about all of these comments that I make to them and can't believe that I don't get teed up more. We're talking about technicals, and that was actually, I was going to lead into that. I remember going out onto the court, and I think it was poor Bruce Mason who was taking the brunt of my ire because his partner was horrific. And I walk out on the court and I'm like, Bruce, I've had enough of this. And he's like, go back to your bench, go back to your bench. And I'm like, no, I'm going to stay out here until you tee me up. And he's like, go back to your bench. I'm like, do I have to call you a cocksucker? And he goes, okay, I'll tee you up. You know, which by the way, will lead us into the greatest sports movies of all time because I stole that from Bull Durham. But, yeah, man, I just hate officials. I hate them with a passion. And then, and then I get in a car and go down and officiate a game. So that leads me to my next officiating question, which we kind of covered real quickly there. But what's the stupidest thing you've done as a coach out on the court with an official?
Wow. I like to think I conduct myself somewhat reasonably from the sidelines and on the court. Yeah, I might have to pass to Wizard first because this,
Well, I mean, I like that we've kind of hit it. Me yelling at Bruce Mason, but, and the Wizard getting teed up the next day. You didn't really hit on any of that, Megs. That's why I was leading that to you. But if the Wizard's got any other really stupid officiating stories, I'd love to hear it.
I can remember coaching a game down in Dairy Field, and I don't know the official's name, but there was something that occurred out on the floor that was kind of absurd. And I went out there, excuse me, sir, can I ask you a question? And he was a great big bear of a man, and he put his arm around me and walked me back to my bench, kind of like a child. And he answered my question the whole way, walking me back, and basically said, now, this is your area. Like a child. So that would have to be one of my most embarrassing moments.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the things I do on the sideline can be embarrassing after I go back and I watch it, and I'm like, you what a jackass sometimes. Overreacting sometimes to a ball that goes out of bounds and has no impact per se. Maybe just pent up frustration, from the officiating. And I just want to hit on the two officials that you name dropped. I think the one thing that stands out is, those two individuals, you're going to get 100% effort every night. They always try to be in position. And then you get some officials that don't make it across half court as the trail official, don't continue to move with the play to try to get better angles, and for lack of a better words, are just there to collect their paycheck and go home, which unfortunately that does cause us some frustration. But the one thing I can think of, and the Wizard was a professional to go into Farmington and knock them off a couple times in the playoffs. I've only had the pleasure.
Who?
What's that?
Sage who?
Yeah, I don't even know who that kid was. I mean, apparently guarding her was optional. But that's what happens when you let one of the most prolific scorers stand open for 32 minutes. Amazing. I mean, it was a hell of a coaching job. I mean, they ran the same play for basically 32 minutes to get her an open shot.
And how many did she have in that game? 39?
30, 39, 30, 30, 36, 39, something like that.
She had 36 or 30.
Again the year before that, same thing. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
We're going to, since we're shitting on officials, we're going to have to just shit on bad coaching too, apparently.
Well,
Sorry, Max.
Adjustments are few and far between sometimes. But I only had the opportunity to coach in a regular season or playoff game in Farmington one time, and obviously two officials had no clue who they were. They had no idea who I was, and the quote unquote jungle gets a little loud. They were like undercutting, our shooters and clipping them. And like, I said, how is that not a foul? And the guy goes, never touched her. And I'm like, what do you mean? My girl's on the floor. She doesn't just fall down by accident. Mm-hmm. And, that was probably, I would say, less than halfway through the first quarter, and they'd done it about 3 times. And he goes, that's enough, coach, back to your bench. I was still in my box. But I'm like, okay, this guy isn't one that I guess I can talk to for the rest of the night. But that's the one instance that comes to mind. I'm sure there's some disappointed officials out there that I'm not remembering currently that would have loved to have their story told about my being a complete ass.
Yeah, I can think of incidents of you being a complete ass, and I wasn't the official in the game. We've got some great stories about the two of us going against each other.
Yeah, we're going to have to save that for another episode.
But still, my favorite reaction to yours, and it's on tape somewhere, is, you can't go through screens like that. Just like rampaging down the other end of the court, and I just laughing my ass off because your kid set an illegal screen and mine decided to go through it as hard as possible.
Yeah, that's a differing of opinions on illegal.
Different. So my favorite story is also down south at one of those southern schools, and apparently the northern officiating must be a lot better than the southern. But we're down there, and the guy makes the wrong call. And I say to him, it's a foul while the ball is in the air on a shot. It's just too hard to get into, but that is not a team control foul at any point. And he calls a foul on the other team and then doesn't let us shoot free throws in the bonus. This is the days of when you had the single and double bonus. And I said, it's just the wrong call. We should be shooting. He goes, no, you're thinking of college, coach. And I said, no, I'm definitely not thinking of college. And he says, you want to bet? And I said to him, yeah, I would love to bet. And he goes, what would you like to bet? And I said, your life. And he goes, you're pretty confident, huh? And I said, well, I teach the class. I should know the rules. And he walked back out on the court and never spoke to me for the rest of the game. But I also never got a call for the rest of the game. So
was he an NBA ref? What was his last name?
Yeah, I think he might have been an NBA official. But yeah, we
want to bet.
We bet his life. Thankfully, we didn't have to take that. I would have had the Wizard come down and have to take that up for me. But see, So when we originally decided that we were going to start shitting on officiating, we were going to call it Shitting on Officiating 1, 2, 3, and 4. We might end up having 8 episodes, but what we won't do to the listeners or the officials is run this back to back to back to back. We have so many things to talk about, like AAU officiating, the NBA versus, college. It just goes down some crazy calls, the hardest ones to call. What I want to say from the officiating standpoint is while we shit on them, and you guys kind of covered this, there's a group of bad officials that just don't work. But most officials are out there working just as hard as good coaches are. And it's really hard to officiate. It's really hard. I feel bad that most places have gone away from these classes that we teach where we get these new recruits in and we teach them how to the book, but we also teach them how to blow a whistle and that kind of stuff. It's now pretty much all online. But if you have any inclination to do it, we are struggling constantly with getting good officials or any officials. Go on to the IABO site and look it up, pay your whatever amount of money, and get a hold of the different officials around the area. They're mentors. When I got back into officiating, Bruce Mason let me officiate with him a bunch on scrimmages, and it was a huge help. So, and I've done that for a bit, and I've got some kids out there that have been officiating for a while. One of them's hopefully going to be doing some D1 college games pretty soon, and the paycheck, while that's not what this is about, is pretty significant. I think if you're a great D1 level college official, you're making $3,300 to $3,500 a game. So, get out there and think about it. Anything you guys got left on officiating before we move on to our GOAT debate?
The only thing I want to stress is, especially to New Hampshire with you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. So, you need to step up to the plate and figure it out. And I think that would help a lot because some of these guys put in full day's work and then they come out and they're out on the floor for 3 hours a night, and, they should be compensated appropriately.
Yeah, well said. Not about the monkeys and the peanuts per se, because there's some of those officials that we do like, and it's really not always about the money. I know that would be a factor. I just think there needs to be some more administration that steps up as well to the plate and takes care of unruly fans and sets examples instead of letting people sit game after game doing the same thing. Have them leave for a night, and then the next time have them leave for the season. That they want to act that way, and maybe it'll clean up the stands a little bit.
That place was called the Ambush too, not the Jungle.
Well, I've always known it as the Jungle, but you ambushed all right.
Yeah. And piggyback on the Wizards comment, I think a lot of people think that officials at the high school level get paid really well. And I just want to say, I would get a $90 paycheck for a varsity game, which sounds pretty good, but I would leave work early. I would drive to Essex, Vermont to do a game. You have to show up at least at halftime of the JV game to rate your JV officials doing the game, and then you drive home. So for, roughly 5 to 6 hours of work, I would get $90 plus a little bit of travel money.
That's ridiculous.
So coaching and officiating, is one of these loves that everybody does. And while I am absolutely hammering on officials, 99% of them are doing it for the love of the game and the kids. And I have a hard time really actually being angry at officials who are working really hard. Some of them have made some bad calls and I scream at them. And I go down into their locker room afterwards and I say, I'm really sorry. You guys did a great job. And I know that even though you absolutely screwed that call and almost cost me the game, you still had the kid's mind and, kids the best in your mind.
So. I think, but that's part of coaching. That's part of anything we do. The emotion of the moment. Like we say things. We all want to protect our kids, I think, and we probably go overboard sometimes. But it's the good officials that understand us, know that it's not personal, and move on. And you're right. A high majority of officials are doing it because they they do enjoy the game, and obviously the paycheck isn't the motivator. And I don't think it's a motivator for any good coaches over the years, because I'm pretty sure we haven't become a millionaire yet doing this.
Nope.
I mean, I think we've all made at least $1.75 an hour. I don't know about up in the Wizard. They pay him in Canadian, and that's reduced at like 70%. So
yeah, maybe the COVID year, because we had to be on break for 10 days.
Thankfully the Wizard and I missed that. We got to talk about that at some point. But everything in the country shut down the morning after the Wizards and my final game.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, you guys. I mean, I always wanted to point the blame somewhere. The other thing was that I got married the month before that. That could have had a catastrophic
22.
That's right, buddy. Don't forget it.
And to the greatest,
except for the 22, buddy, it was 20. 20.
I thought it was 22.
No, it was 20.
Oh,
that's the year you and I were done.
In 20.
But we got to give a huge shout out to Megan, because you married the single most wonderful human being in the entire world.
A saint.
An absolute saint. And Wizard and I have talked about this off air before without Mags around. She is a superhuman, and she is our hero.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm sure that she stopped listening to our episodes after 5 minutes of episode 1. But, if she does listen to this, I couldn't agree with you guys anymore.
You better.
All right, we're at 31 minutes. I told you we were never going to get through this. This monologue thing cost us 26 minutes this morning.
It cost us 4.5, but who's counting?
Yeah. So my GOAT debate, my pick this week is the greatest sports movies of all time. And what I've asked for is the top 3, but you have to pick a definitive number 1. The guy that I'm working on a project with right now, he was born in 1990, and his pick is Cool Runnings. So I wanted to ask somebody a little bit younger than that. He says he watches it all the time. And so when I pick my picks, you guys are going to laugh at my number 1 pick too, because I watch it all the time, and almost any time after a late night game coming home, I would sit in my living room with the TV on, laughing my ass off, and my wife would come out blurry-eyed and she'd go, "Are you kidding me? You're watching this shit again?" So anyway, that's my lead into that. So I'm going to lead this off in our normal order of Mags going first. Hit it, Mags.
All right. Well, as you asked, I narrowed it down to 3. They're going to be all basketball movies, just so you know. There was a 4th that wasn't, but my top 3 were Glory Road, Hoosiers, and Coach Carter. And it came down in my thinking of maybe 50 seconds between Coach Carter and Hoosiers. Coach Carter, because it reminds me a lot of myself and a lot of coaches, where academics has to be first and foremost, in a student athlete. And obviously all 3 movies that I picked were based on true stories. There were some fictional parts of the movies that didn't necessarily happen. But my number 1, I guess, greatest of all time, not just basketball, but sports movie would be Hoosiers. Because of the underdog mentality. And one of my favorite lines from that movie, and I know I'm not a movie guy, you guys are going to learn that if they ever do a podcast here about movies. You probably won't hear me speak much, which a lot of listeners would probably appreciate. But my one of the favorite lines from that is, "My practices aren't designed for your enjoyment." So Hoosiers, shout out to Gene Hackman, may he rest in peace. Dennis Hopper, good flick.
Nice picks, Mac.
Yeah, not bad at all. Did take one of mine, but mine are going to be, I like The Natural. I liked Hoosiers, and I also liked League of Their Own. And the aspect of League of Their Own, there were a lot of comical people in there. I guess they tried to be somewhat funny, but I just like the seriousness of the game and the aspect of, the men were off to war, and it gave a chance for women to shine in their absence. And there were some great athletes that they portrayed, though they didn't have any African American women in there who I think probably would have excelled as well. There were some great parts of the movie. The Natural, it was just a good movie all around, I thought. And Hoosiers is again, speaks for itself. So.
And your number one?
Oh, I'm going to have to go with League of Their Own. I love that movie.
Nice.
Okay.
And I had mentioned Bull Durham earlier. It didn't make it into the top three. My number three is The Sandlot, probably one of the ones that I laugh the most at. And in practice, probably the one I quote the most. I would often say to the occasional player, if I had a dog as ugly as you, I'd shave his butt and tell him to walk backwards. That usually got a good look. My number two, and the movie I've probably watched second most of all time, is Caddyshack.
Yeah.
And then my number one, and my wife is furious again for me picking this. She says it's not even a sports movie, but I've told her the entire movie is about a sport, is Big Lebowski.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
that is a
which
fun
I
movie.
also quote regularly, but on this family kind of a show, I can't quote it. So we'll skip that. I think there was one point it had the most times it dropped the F-bomb in a movie. That has been since replaced. But those are my top three, with the Big Lebowski being number one. And Mags, you've talked about this before, but we've started to get people, throwing in. I picked this topic this week because everybody has seen movies and sports movies, even Mags has. So, if you're listening, go ahead and make a comment on it so that we can see it. I saw one listener voted, put in their NCAA player. That was awesome.
Yeah,
So,
Candace Parker.
put your movies on our thing so that, it looks like we actually have people listening for more than 8 or 9 seconds, which I understand.
Yeah. I mean, even if you only listen to like 5 minutes of the podcast, this is the best 5 minutes probably, is the GOAT debate.
I don't know. The monologue, both the Wizard and I think the monologue's really gone over pretty hot big.
Yeah, that was a torture.
Well, I'm sure it's called worse out there by our listeners. And hey, every good podcast has to evolve, evolution, remember?
Yeah.
Like cheese.
Like we're on the, what is it? We're like pre-Magnon man, right? Still,
Not all of us can age like a fine wine.
No.
Only the Wizard.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. Anything else?
No.
You're done?
Yeah, we got to under 40 minutes. We've got 1 minute and 30 seconds. We got to get this thing done and over. Remember, attention span of this generation. Max.
I get it. We're gonna close this out once and for all, and we're gonna keep it under 39 minutes. So, signing off for this week's episode of Coaches and Coffee. Until next week, enjoy.